My name is Shirley Thompson. I'm 67 years old and have lived almost my entire life in Portland, Oregon. Then, Anisaqua. I was a teacher, a mother, Mundira, a wife, one of those who do everything in silence, with faith in their hearts and cake coming out of the oven for anyone who asks. But tell me one thing. What a mother must feel when she is between life and death, and the children themselves choose to go to a party? Sounds like a lie. Doesn't it? But that's how it happened. While I struggled to breathe in a hospital, my kids were toasting champagne at their daughter-in-law's party. They didn't call me. They did not show up. And when they came, it was too late. I was no longer the same woman they left behind. If you're here listening to this, you may also be wondering how love turns into neglect. How can children raised with so much sacrifice forget those who loved them the most? I also asked myself these questions. In this video, you'll find out what happened that night. And more than that, you will understand why I chose to disappear from their lives. Because there are times when silence is the only answer. And I gave my answer. No screaming, no drama, but it hurt like never before. But before we dive into the heart of this story, I need you to know one thing. When I woke up in that white room, surrounded by wires and machines, the first thing I heard was that my children, they did not come. One sang style. The hospital had called. Yes, but they were busy. What? Busy with a party, laughing, dancing, now, while I fought to stay alive. And when they finally came, days later, they no longer found the mother they left. They found only emptiness and a letter they would never forget. If you've come this far, it's because you may know this pain of being left by those who should care the most. So, now, why don't you attention so? If my outburst touches your heart, leave your like, subscribe to the channel. Not out of vanity, but to show that there are still people who feel together. Because this story is not just mine. It belongs to every woman who has been forgotten in silence. I've always been the type who wakes up early, even without having time for anything. The body gets used to it, right? At 6 in the morning, the sun barely passed through the curtains, and I already have the kettle on the fire, waiting for that little noise of the coffee rising, which is almost a prayer for me. I sit in the same chair in the kitchen. Open the newspaper. I still like paper. Those that get their hands dirty with ink and read the news of the world as if looking for something that makes sense. Then I take a walk around the plants on the balcony. My violets are faithful. They bloom without asking for anything. Different from certain people. The next door neighbor, Mr. Goldberg, always waves his hat. We never exchanged more than 5 sentences, but he has a respect in his eyes that, I confess, has been missing me at home. My sons, Michael and Ethan, were my life mission. I raised them both with the little that my late husband and I managed to gather. I worked in a public school for 35 years. I never missed a bill. I never missed food. I made them a trousseau with my own hands. And when their father got sick, I was the one who took care of them until their last breath. Michael has always been more ambitious. He graduated in business administration and soon went to work at a technology company in Seattle. He married Hannah, an elegant, determined girl, one of those who make a guest list even for a common dinner. Ethan, on the other hand, has always been sweeter. He studied gastronomy, opened a bistro in Portland. His wife, Lydia, is an influencer. He lives with his cell phone in his hand. God dears, and every time he visits me, when he visits, he records everything. Even my hand served as an extra the other day, while she was making a simple life video. In the first years of marriage, they still tried to maintain that routine of lunches on Sundays, birthdays together, on the own, one eye. Easter at my house. I did a great job. Turkey, walnut pie, the white towel that belonged to my mother. The grandchildren came running down the corridor, and I pretended to be scolded. But inside, what's in the water? Inside it was just joy. But one day Hannah suggested having Christmas alternate, one year at my house, another with her parents. I accepted. Now, of course, we don't want to get in the way, right? The following year, I did see when to call it. Materna stars still waiting. Lydia said that lunches were getting tiring for the children. The next, Michael called me saying that they were all too busy and that they were going to skip the date. And so, what was a habit has become an exception. Later, the exception turned into silence. It was slow. I didn't even notice when I started having lunch alone on Mother's Day. When I saw it, the table was always set for myself until I stopped putting an extra plate. He just left the radio on so as not to hear his own emptiness. No, there is one thing that no one prepares you for in life. The moment when you realize that you have become a supporting player in your own story. We spend decades being the center of care, of love, of mess, and suddenly they don't even remember that you exist. Pause here. Until just a moment. If you've ever felt that tightness in your chest of being forgotten by those who should love you the most, comment below with just one sentence. It can be I believe. I've lived it. No. It touched me. But he writes, because sometimes sharing the pain with those who understand is the only consolation we have. Returning, what hurt the most was not the absence. It was the formality. They started to treat me as if I were a distant acquaintance. Hi, Shirley, they said on the phone. Hi, Shirley. Not even mother came out anymore. The daughters-in-law sent cold, except almost corporate messages. Hi, how are you? Sunday won't work, okay? And when they came, it was as if they made an appointment. Hannah always looking at the clock. Lydia too busy trying to frame my old couch on Instagram, but I was still deluded. I took unaccountable. I said to myself, it's modern life. Why should practically sell the count? Was anyone fancy? Did anyone count a captain? Surely, young people are like that. I was attached to little kindnesses. A belated birthday card. No. A lightning visit at the end of the day. Anything became a reason to keep hope. Until Lydia's birthday came. And that's when that everything began to change. That same weekend, my body gave me a signal, a sign that I ignored, but that would become the fuse of the greatest pain of my life. And I'll tell you this, in the next part, it was on a Thursday in March, the eve of Lydia's birthday, that I began to notice the signs that I had previously made a point of ignoring. The pain in my chest came lightly. Wow. A weird pressure, as if a weight was squeezing me inside. But I'm the type who doesn't want to bother. No. You know, I thought it was just tiredness. I made a chamomile tea, lay on the couch, and let it go. The next morning, I got up as if nothing had happened. No, but that feeling didn't go away. Deep down, I knew something was wrong, but there was something worse pressing on me. The feeling that even if something serious happened, no one would come, no one would notice, and I wasn't wrong. In the days that followed, when soon touched her down, I tried to talk to Michael to find out if they would be coming on Sunday. Nothing. No. I called twice, sent a message. No. Nobody said you'll comment. Hannah replied 3 days later with a short text. Hi. Shirley, let's celebrate Lid's birthday this weekend. It's going to be very busy. Okay. Kisses. Without even asking how I was. Ethan, when he answered, seemed busy. When he said that maybe he would pass on Monday. Perhaps these maybes began to become routine. I prepared the table, left the linen cloth on the round table in the kitchen, put on 2 placemats, because Hope still wouldn't let me put 4, and stayed there, pretending it was just another day. It was during this time that Hannah began to suggest that I rest more. One day, on the phone, she said, Shirley, you need to take care of your health. These lunches are too tiring. Don't you think? We can see ourselves less, but with more quality. More quality. What kind of quality is there in emptiness? Lydia was also gaining space, not in my life, but in the lives of my grandchildren. She began to change her habits, to teach new, more modern things. Mary Copley said how was I? As she herself said, no. On a quick visit they made, he corrected me in front of little Ben, who was learning the names of the months. Tut. I said October, and she cut it off. Ben, now, love. Remember that we say October. Like at school. It's better now. Okay, as if my word were something outdated. No, that hurt me more than it should have. Not because of what was said, but because of how it was said. It was as if my story, my way, everything I carried and taught, was being swept under the rug. Another time, we were at a dinner party. Michael's birthday. and a child outnursed it at their house. The food was good, the wine too fine for my taste. I started to tell a story about the little boys when we went camping in a park and Ethan fell into a stream. It was a silly memory, but so full of life. As I spoke, I noticed Michael's eyes glazed over his phone. Hannah whispered something to Lydia and laughed softly. And Ethan, was looking at the clock. No one really listened to me. I stood there, my voice breaking, holding the end of the sentence in my throat. They didn't even realize that I stopped talking. On the way home, inside the Uber, I held back my tears, and I thought, will I just become an old portrait on the wall of their lives? Has my voice aged too much to be heard? Do you know what hurt me the most? It wasn't rudeness. There was no shouting, no arguing. It was the opposite. Everything was too polite, too clean, too cold, like someone who sweeps our presents under the rug carefully so that no one notices. But we notice, and he feels. Each absence is an invisible cut. I remember one morning when I looked at my closet and thought, why so much embroidered dishcloth? I did so many, thinking that one day I would give it to my daughters-in-law, to my granddaughters. But I don't even have granddaughters, and the daughters-in-law prefer to buy everything new, personalized, with a printed name. 1 year so my income don't match their style. All this left me with a lump in my throat that I couldn't explain, until one day, he came. No, count, when I stayed out in the town, your count, the sign I could no longer ignore. And it was right in the middle of Lydia's party. But you want to know what happened that night, don't you? Well, I'll tell you. But you need to be prepared. Because what's next? Everything changed. Even what I felt for myself. In that week of Lydia's party, I was no longer well. My heart was racing, and sometimes it felt like my body wanted to tell me something ahead of time. But it wasn't just the physical. It was the tired soul. Everything that kept me standing seemed to have turned to dust over time. And yet, when the phone rang and I saw Ethan's name on the screen, my heart cheered. I still expected affection when they came to me. I was still mistaken, thinking it was nostalgia. But on the other end of the line, his voice was hurried, direct, one words. Mom, I need a little help. Then, it's quick. The restaurant was in trouble. A debt with a supplier. A late payment, a small amount that he needed to cover by the end of the month. I listened to everything quietly, sitting on the end of the bed, holding the phone with both hands. He didn't even ask if I was okay. He didn't even mention how much I had missed him on Sunday. I just said, Mois, Mom, if you can make a pix. Mom, I thank you so much. That same night, I made the transfer. I used what I had saved for my car insurance. I ran out, but I thought, it's for my son. He needs it. It was not the first time. Michael had also come to me months before, saying that he needed my name as a guarantor in a loan. It's a simple thing. Mom, Hannah wants to change her car, but the bank requires someone with older credit. It's going to be just for the record. Mom, don't worry. No. I read the papers without understanding properly. I signed without question, because the truth is that I was still that mother of always, the one who gave the best piece of the chicken, who waited for her children to return on the sofa in the living room with the lights on, who put the blanket on their feet without them noticing. I was still that, but they, mourn, I was you. They were no longer my boys. One night, I woke up sleepless and went to the bookshelf to get an old photo. It was our first Christmas after their father died. Nan Wakaseye was your younger warden. Me, with the apron stained with farofa, both of them in the same pajamas. Ethan with one tooth missing. I remembered the nights when I corrected exams until 2 in the morning, giving private lessons to pay for their private school. I remember the times when I preferred to ride the bus so that they could go on school excursions. And then the day I sold my house came to mind. Our home, the home where the two grew up, ran through the corridors, marked the height on the door of the laundry. I sold everything to help Michael buy a bigger house in Seattle. It's temporary, Mom. I'll give it back to you as soon as the company gets into gear. The company grew. The house became beautiful, but the money never came back, and neither did the invitation to see the house ready. When a child I became a kind of emotional vault. They only came to me when they needed to take something away. A favor, a signature, a piece of my history. But no one bothered to give anything back, nor time, beauty, stories, not even attention, nor affection. How? And the cruelest thing is that, even seeing all this, I still thought it was love, unrequited love, perhaps, but love, not, until something made me open my eyes, something that I saw, or rather, that I heard in an unintentional conversation, and when the penny dropped. Want to know what it was? So hold on tight, because what's next? It will hurt. Having a birthday after a certain age is different. We don't expect a party or an expensive gift. We just hope to be remembered, to be seen, to be loved. On my 68th birthday, I woke up before the sun. As usual, the sky was still dark blue, and I stood there, sitting on the bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking, is anyone going to call? But I soon shook off that idea and went to take care of things. I prepared my chocolate cake, the one that boys loved when they were little. I separated the white towel with a blue flower, the same one I used on special dates. I set the table for 4, a foolish gesture, perhaps, but I still believed it could be different. I waited all day. The doorbell did not ring. The phone went silent. Not a message, not an audio, nothing. Only silence. At 7 o'clock at night, The smell of cake still hung in the air. I had already saved half of it. Ashamed of myself, I sat in the armchair with my cell phone in my hand and, on impulse, opened social networks. That was where their lives happened. After all, the first photo I saw was of Lydia and Hannah together, smiling with a glass of bubbly in hand. The caption read, "Oh, surprise party for the mother-in-law of the year." What a night! My heart stopped for a second. I thought they were talking about me, but it was enough to go down a little further to see the truth. It was Lydia's birthday. They had thrown her a surprise party. And me? I was forgotten. The caption was a cruel joke. No mention of my name. No old photos. No generic phrases. Nothing. Not even an emoji. The irony cut me deeper than anything else. It was at that moment that I felt that twinge in my chest again. But unlike the other times, now I felt it again. This one came with a sadness that seemed to come from another life. I held on to the arm of the armchair. And then stared in what young dice. Took a deep breath and stood there, quiet, with my eyes fixed on the wall. The cake was cooling in the kitchen, and I died inside in silence. You know, in here, opening my heart, telling my story. If you're listening, leave a like on this video and subscribe to the channel, because I still have a lot of things saved to tell you. Because there is pain that only we understand. That night, I didn't cry. I was just empty. There is a pain that does not scream. It just silences. I slept without dinner. You. I woke up with dry eyes and a heavy soul. The next day, Michael texted me, Mom, I saw it was your birthday yesterday. Sorry for the rush. We were organizing a surprise for Lyd. She deserves so much. Then, well, go there. Okay? I just read it. I didn't answer. No. Oh, it was on that day that I understood that it was not forgetfulness. It was a choice. They chose not to remember. And it was also on that day that my heart warned me once and for all. But do you think that was all? No, because what happened after that night showed me that the worst was yet to come. And no one, absolutely no one. I was prepared. The pain started as a light squeeze, almost a little pressure in the middle of the chest. I sat slowly on the bed, thinking it was just the weight of the cake, the disappointment, the age, or altogether. I looked at the clock. No. 2:15 in the morning. The house was completely silent, but inside me it felt like there was a siren going off. My chest throbbed. My hands were cold, and a dizziness came like a wave, dragging my body to the side of the bed. I picked up the phone with trembling fingers and dialed Michael. Once, twice, 3 times. Mailbox? His voice saying, "Leave your message," seemed more distant than ever. I tried Ethan. He answered the second call. "Hello? Ethan. It's me. In pen. Say a lot of chest pain. On the other side, I heard a strong beat, loud music, voices in chorus. Mom, now I can't. In the salon. Oh, here. Lydia turns 35 today. Remember? The party is full here. Tomorrow, I'll stop by. Okay? Sleep a little. Try to obey. How calm. It must be anxiety. And he hung up. I remained there with my cell phone in my hand. Wow. Sitting on the stairs, trying to breathe. I couldn't. I owed down. It was as if the air was being ripped from my body. I tried to call for help, but the voice would come out until everything became blurry. The last thing I remember before turning it off was seeing a light on outside. Mr. Wow, Cat Peterson's window. Wow. When I woke up, I was in the hospital. The ceiling was white, the lights very bright, tubes in my nose, machine beeping non-stop. What and Katopenstom. The nurse said my name slowly. What? Shirley. Well on. Shirley. Do you hear me? Yes. I listened. Once so wow. Hi. But everything inside me screamed. Between one medication and another, I kept coming back, little by little. Why, the doctor said it was a heart attack, that I was lucky not to be alone until the end, that the neighbor found me lying on the stairs of the building and called the ambulance in time. But the truth is that I was alone. No, alone in pain, alone in the cry for help. Sue, alone on the night of my own end. Meanwhile, I died on the other side of town. Sue and Carl, my children, were dancing. You know that scene that goes through our minds when we think we're going to die. That's that. Mine was full of small voices, childish laughter, one only down. The little Michael calling me Mommy. Look. Ethan giving me a kiss with his mouth dirty with gelatin. And I, there in the middle of the hospital, with heart failing, just wanted to go back to that kitchen with the smell of rice pudding. No one showed up in the first few hours. No call, no flower, no request for forgiveness. The doctors asked if I had any family members. I gave the number of the two. Waited. Why? No, nothing. The next afternoon, I heard the nurse talking to someone on the phone. You have been hospitalized since yesterday. Yes, it is serious. She's conscious now. I'm tired. Can you visit today? It was Michael. He said that everything had been very rushed, that the party had become a big event, that he had not heard the phone. I closed my eyes and pretended to sleep. Pretending has become a habit for me. Pretend it doesn't hurt, that it doesn't matter. No, wow, that their absence does not tear apart. But there, long since Hasher, and him not fairly see your rada. There, I could no longer pretend, because something inside me had died for good. And you want to know what I did when they finally showed up at the hospital? Because they came, yes, days later, what? Abel Consing Septown. and they found something they didn't expect, something I had prepared in silence. But this, I'll tell you about that in the next part. I woke up with a dry throat, a cold body, and a ringing in my ear that seemed to come from within the soul. The ICU lights were too white, too cold, too quiet. The first thing I saw was the smooth roof, without marks. The second was the wires attached to my chest, the sensors glued to the thin skin of my arm. And the third, it was the face of Nurse Claire. Young, hair tied in a sloppy bun, attentive but gentle eyes. She held my hand, and in that moment, that stranger was all I had. You're in the hospital, Mrs. Al Thompson. Calm down. It's okay, Lyle. You had a heart attack, but the worst is over. Spent? I wanted to believe it, but inside me, something told me that the worst was just beginning. The doctor came in shortly after. Dr. Allen Alnau introduced himself. Calm voice, nil, eyes, outstanding channel. Steady hands. He told me that my heart had stopped 3 times. You were lucky. See? The neighbor found it in time. He spoke as if it was just another case on duty. But for me, it was the day the world ended. He asked if I had family nearby. I said yes. 2 children. He frowned. Strange. We called several times. One said he was busy. The other didn't even return. I was silent. I looked at the ceiling. I felt the tear flow on its own. In the hallway, I heard the nurses talking. They speak loudly. Sometimes they forget that we listen. Is that the lady in room 3? Yes. The son said he was at a party and couldn't go out. But it was serious, wasn't it? Her heart stopped 3 times. Woman, 1. Wow. And yet he stayed there? Wife's birthday? Oh. He said, at that time, my body no longer felt pain. It was the soul that hurt. Tell me, what makes a mother stay alive? If her own son says he can't leave the party while she dies? Claire noticed my silence and shook my hand again. Oh, she didn't say anything. It just stayed there. That girl I had never seen in my life had more presence than the 2 men I raised. I looked at the tubes, the dripping serum, the monitor beep, and all I could think was, moo. I gave my life for them. I sold my house. I gave my youth, my sleepless nights, my gray hair, my food, my sechao, that can't accord my health, and they, I guess, it is you. They didn't even give me a minute of his wife's birthday to see if I was still breathing. It was there that I knew, not rationally, but deep in the chest, love was over. Not mine, theirs. It's hard to say that, I know, but sometimes we love so much that we don't realize when we become invisible. And if you've come this far with me, stay. Because what comes next will change everything. You haven't seen the most painful part, or the most beautiful, of this story. I stayed there for 2 days, eating bland soup, Ah, listening to machines beep. Whoa, waiting for a visitor. One call, one call. A sign. On the third day, Claire brought a little paper flower. Ah, handmade. There, while I so content. So you don't feel alone, she said. And I cried. I cried like I hadn't cried in years. She sat next to me and asked if I wanted to write something. Is there paper there? I asked. Will you? Ringworm, House, Lausithiesen, Pound. And it was with that role that I started. But what I wrote, and what they found after, that's what turned this story upside down. Do you want to know what was in that letter? Then hold your heart, because it's coming. The answer they never imagined they would receive. The following days were slow, dragged like light rain in a closed window. The hospital had a silence that hurt more than any loud sound. Claire came every day, said good morning to me with a sincere smile, the kind we don't see around anymore. She had a warm coffee hidden. Don't tell the supervisor, she said, and I smiled. Oh, even without feeling like it. My body was recovering, but my soul, no. I stood there with that folded paper next to the bed, writing parts of my life that even I didn't remember still hurting. It was as if time had opened a box that had been locked for decades. I remembered the nights I spent awake, correcting tests in the small apartment where we raised the boys. Jefferson High School, my second home for over 30 years. I remembered the smell of chalk, the noisy classes, the letters that the students left on my desk. Thanks, Mrs. Thompson. No, well, that made me feel important. Then came the busy days at home. I cooked with one hand and sewed with the other. I made entire uniforms for a generation of students, free of charge, just to help. And with what was left, I bought new shoes for my children. Their father, Town, Henry Wettingtown, left early with a cancer that arrived too quickly. It was in the fall. The leaves were red, and he asked me not to let the boys give up studying, teach them to be good men. Shirley, intercede. I promised, and I complied. At least, that's what I thought for a long time. Now, in that hospital bed, their tiny faces came to my mind like old film. Michael with his scraped knees and that corner smile. Ethan dancing in the middle of the room with a t-shirt 3 sizes bigger. And I, we, there in the middle. Now can't see you, white. Tired, no, but happy, because everything I did was for them. Only now, I could see clearly the love I gave was not enough to teach gratitude, nor respect, nor presence. No, there's one thing that cuts me inside more than any rejection. It's realizing that I created men, but I forgot to create character. And if you on the other side have ever felt it, this mixture of love, guilt, and disappointment, comment below with just one sentence. It can be, I know how it is. I understand you. Now, it's true. Anything that connects you with me now, because this pain This pain should not be experienced alone. Nurse Claire, said the boys, finally called on the fourth day. They asked if I was still hospitalized. If it was really serious, she answered with the patience of someone who has seen too much. She almost died. That old cop, almighty down there. She mounted you was sir. Sir, what do you think? I didn't want to see anyone. I asked to keep the visit restricted. I made up that I needed to rest. But the truth? The truth is that I no longer wanted to feign joy when I saw those who only came to me out of obligation. I continued writing the letter, remembering everything of Christmases with the smell of cloves, of the blanket I shared with them on the couch, of the stories I made up before bed. And I also wrote about the day I sold the house where all this happened. I burned my past to finance their future. And what did I get back? An icy absence. But the letter was not just an outburst. It was a decision. And when they finally appeared, I was no longer there. I wonder what they thought when they saw that empty bed and an envelope on the pillow. In the next part, you'll find out. Now, they arrived on the third day. I already knew they would come, not out of regret, but out of the weight of guilt. That kind of guilt that only appears when there's an audience. When it is too late, and the absence begins to look like naughtiness. Michael entered first, a bouquet of withered flowers in his hand. Noir. Daisies. Cheap? No. No bow. What? No card? New. He forced a smile as if trying to look emotional. He looked around, measured the environment, and said in a rehearsed tone, Mom, not in she. What a fright you gave us. Behind him, me. Hannah was arranging her hair as if she were about to take a picture. He sat down next to the bed and crossed his legs. Impeccable. No, it smelled like perfume too sweet. He ran his hand on my arm with a distant, almost automatic touch, and let go. It was lucky. Was lucky. Shirley, nowadays heart is treacherous. Ethan came soon after. Mom, with Lydia glued to his arm. She took off her sunglasses. Then, what interests you? Looked around with visible boredom and whispered something in his ear. And he let out a giggle. I remained silent. The body is still tired? No. But the mind. His mind was clearer than ever. Michael leaned in slightly. Hannah did you win about? No silk shy on Panati. We didn't know it was so serious. Mom, you should have insisted. Insisted. That's what he thought. That I should have begged for attention, even with my heart failing. I watched each one of them as if observing strangers in the subway. The well-ironed clothes, the designer shoes, the expensive watches, and inside, empty. I didn't cry. He doesn't smile. I didn't speak. There, on that cold stretcher, Wilhelm wonders. I realized that love is like an old house. You build, sustain, repair leaks, endure the winters. But if no one enters, if no one takes care of it, no, At some point it collapses, and at that moment, my house collapsed. When they left, after 28 minutes, they left behind a crooked bouquet, a box of diet chocolates, and an unbearable silence. That same night, I asked Claire for pen and paper. Are you going to write more letters, Mrs. Shirley? She asked with a smile. No, my dear. How? Today's different. She handed me the notepad and a blue pen. Wow. I sat slowly in the armchair next to the bed. It was dawn. Me. I am Talmud. The hospital was asleep, but I was awake like never before. It was there that I began to write the letter. No, but not as an outburst, as a decision. The pain turned to clarity. Wow. The wound became a map, and the abandonment, it became a compass. There was born a woman they had never met. Cold, Sirena, Nisa calm, Fizinolkar, Nastat Isto, analytical, someone who got tired of waiting. And do you know what I wrote in that letter? Wait, because its content will still turn their lives upside down. That night in the hospital, I couldn't sleep. The ticking of the heart machine filled the room like a clock of life, warning me, you're still here. Surely, there is still time. More. I stared out the window, at the dark outside, and everything seemed so silent. But inside me, something new was beginning to make noise. It wasn't anger, nor sadness. It was clarity. For the first time in many years, I understood that continuing was different from insisting, and I was tired of insisting where there was only absence. I picked up the paper again. I wrote 2 letters. The first was a confession. I told everything I felt. I wrote as someone who writes for no one, or for everyone. I spoke of the love I carried in my body for years, of the emptiness that set in, of the loneliness that I learned to disguise with recipes and dish towels. I talked about the moment when I felt that I could die alone, and that it would not cause more than a logistical inconvenience in my children's schedule. I ended with a sentence that came out effortlessly. I don't want to be an ignored presence anymore. I prefer to be felt absence. The second letter was practical, cold, white, legal instructions, bank details, location of documents, name of the lawyer. I had already made my decision. The next morning, I called Claire Lizio. I need some help, one that may deviate from protocol. She sat on the edge of the bed with that calm and curious way. You saved my days here. You know, always so polite, even in pain. You can ask for anything. I hold her in pieces. Well, what I wanted to do. And she didn't look at me with shock, not even with pity. He looked at me with respect. My sister is a lawyer. Reliable? Can I schedule it for you to talk? Yes, but without the boys knowing. 2 afternoons later, Claire's sister came into the room with a discreet binder in her hand. We speak softly. I organized everything. I signed what I needed. I gave full powers. My plan was not revenge. It was a breather. I didn't want to punish them with yelling or accusations. I wanted to show, with my disappearance, what the weight of true silence is. They knew where I lived. They knew my phone number. Knew I. They knew my taste for cornmeal cake and my passion for old movies. They knew everything, but they forgot about me. Now, I was going to teach them what the absence of truth is. There would be no drama, nor farewell. This soon, Carl, Kadonan, a pardon to your hand. Only the disappearance of those who got tired of begging for love. And if this piece of my life can become a mirror or a hug for someone, help me carry it forward. Like and subscribe here to the channel. Why? It makes more difference than you think. I stayed in the hospital for 3 more days. When I was discharged, the only thing I took with me was the peace of someone who left a burden behind. I returned home as someone who goes back to pack an old life. But do you want to know what I did with everything I left behind? Oh, I'll tell you about that in the next part, because that's when my plan started to take shape. Returning home after the hospital was like entering a place that no longer belonged to me. Every piece of furniture, every plate on the shelf, worn-dried, every dusty photograph, everything there seemed to echo a painful question. Why did you stay here waiting for them for so long? There were no more flowers on the table. Ha! The cake I made for my birthday had moldy in the fridge. And the light on the balcony, the one Michael said he would one day come to change, still flickered non-stop. It was in this house, in absolute silence, that I finalized my plan. Rachel, the lawyer Claire introduced to me, showed up 2 days after I was discharged. Discreet, elegant, calm, efficient. The conversation was quick, almost surgical. I handed her a folder with the documents of the house, the statement of the account that the boys did not know existed, and a paper with clear instructions. Are you sure? She asked, with a tone of someone who has seen other mothers retreat at the last moment. I do. I only ask that you do everything without fanfare. I don't want a headache, not even a scene. She nodded. You're fine. Oh, nice. He explained each step to me. Oh, everything would be done with discretion, legality, and without leaving traces that the boys could contest later. I then called Margaret Lewis, my upstairs neighbor, house, widowed like me, discreet, faithful, wise, one of those people who don't talk much, but do a lot. Margaret, I need you. She came down with a pot of soup in her hand and watchful eyes. I told him everything, from the hospital to the letter. She didn't ask why. He only replied, when you want to leave, I'll go with you to the bus station. She also signed Rachel's papers as a witness. From that day on, she would be my legal attorney. He would have the power to take care of the bills, pass on notices, close the front door, and leave the key in the agreed place. I spent the next 2 days cleaning the house in silence. Every closet I emptied was like a part of me that I decided to abandon. I donated books, clothes, utensils, down. What was left fit in a blue suitcase with worn wheels. And finally, I wrote the 3rd letter, the shortest, the cruelest. You will have what you gave me. Silence. I folded the paper calmly. A candlestick of wine. I left it inside the Bible on the shelf. You, on the page of Ecclesiastes. There is a time to be silent, and a time to speak. That part of the story, now. This part am telling you now. It's where the woman I've been all my life started to die, and another one was born. Mine, a lighter, light, unhidden circle, firmer, wing, calm, quieter surely, loved, down, up, down, but still alive. And if you've come this far with me, stay just a little longer, because what happened on the day of the match, I still get goosebumps today. The next day, I woke up before the sun. I made coffee for myself and Margaret. She helped me close the suitcase. He gave me a long, wordless hug. I walked out the door with my heart beating calmly, like someone coming out of an open prison. But do you know what they found when they decided to show up at my house a few days later? Oh, I haven't told you that yet. And when I tell you, no, you'll understand that the emptiness, it has weight. I'll not give no season. I'll say, and there is an answer. One calm. 2 days before my departure, when the dance God, we had out here, Town. While I was waiting for Rachel to bring in the last transfer papers, I sat at the clinic's reception desk to settle a follow-up exam. The receptionist was busy with calls and, for a moment, did notice that I was there, sitting just behind the frosted glass partition. It was then that I heard it. Yes, sir, I can check. One moment. She said, you know, Adelia. She said some talk to Risha. In her usual professional voice. The full name, Shirley Thompson. Right? My name. The silence that followed was like a punch. I see. Yes. Yes. The plan covers part of the expenses, as long as the hospitalization was an emergency. Yes, sir. Martin. No. I know. I assume that's to you. We still don't have a discharge forecast. I held my breath. Oh. And about outstanding amounts. Mrs. Thompson didn't leave any invoice open. Yes. Clear. Then Sino.com. Everything is in order. No. Hung up. Then you, a careless sipon, Sinoid Albugray. He returned to work as if nothing had happened. And I stood there with my heart frozen. Michael, Mika, Tom. It was him. He didn't call to find out if I was awake, if I needed something. Not even to say, Mom. No. I'm glad you're alive. He called to find out if the insurance would cover it, and if there would be no bill left for him. I took a deep breath. I thought it couldn't get worse. But 2 days later, Claire appeared with restless eyes. He called me a corner. I don't know if I should say. No. Mrs. Well, Shirley. But I think you deserve to know. I kept quiet. She continued. Down. Your other son, Ethan, he called here too. Not to know about you. He asked if the lady had left something. A document. One account. An inheritance. At that time, I didn't feel angry, uncalichistua, nor sadness. I felt what only those who have loved too much can feel: emptiness, lanong. It was as if the last thread that still bound me to this idea of motherhood had been cut. They no longer saw me as a mother. How? They saw me as paperwork, liabilities, signatures, iron, costs. I returned home in silence that afternoon. I lay on the bed and looked at the ceiling. It was there that I whispered in a low voice, "Love ended a long time ago." And, you know, there are memories that hurt for days, others for decades, but some, they are like eternal splinters, small, not audicible, invisible, how now, but that we feel every time we take a deeper breath. If you have any memory that still accompanies you today, or no, even if time has passed, tell me here in the comments. Sometimes, sharing a pain makes her lose weight. You can just write, "I've lived it," or "I understand," because it has wounds that only those who have felt it recognize. After that, I went to my sewing box. I took the last navy blue thread I had left and embroidered my name on a small piece of linen. It was everything I wanted to take with me. But before leaving, I left the house organized, the bed made, now the fridge cleans, the table was set, as if it were going to receive someone. And next to the phone, I left the Bible open. But you want to know what else was there? What did they find when they finally knocked on that door? I'll tell you. Why calm, but prepare the heart, because the truth sometimes burns more than abandonment. They came to the hospital as if they were going to a business meeting, well dressed, too fragrant, with looks trained to look worried. Well, Nurse Claire warned me beforehand. If you want, I can tell you that you are not in a condition to receive visitors. But I asked him to let him in. I needed to see with my own eyes what time has done to those boys who once slept on my lap. Michael entered first. No. It brought flowers, this time more expensive. Well, but still soulless. Hannah was behind her, with a tight smile on her face, the kind of smile you learn to recognize as disguise. Ethan appeared soon after, alone, bound. Lydia, according to him, had a migraine. They stood there, at the foot of my bed, waiting for me to speak, waiting for me to cry, for me to charge, for me to beg for love. But no, I took a deep breath, looked into their eyes, and said, "Huh?" in a low, firm voice. Now, the way I learned to speak when I needed to teach silence to a room full of teenagers. I don't want explanations. I didn't come here to listen to excuses. I just want you to observe. Observe what time does to those who choose parties instead of presences. Hannah tried to smile, as if to say, "Let's move on." But the smile found no support in any of the corners of the room. Lydia didn't even have the courage to show up. Michael stepped forward, with his hand in his pocket. Well, what he always did when he was going to try to control a conversation. "Mom, it wasn't quite like that. We didn't know it was so serious." It was all a misunderstanding. I raised my hand, and he kept silent. Ah, the doctors told me what you said. I heard your words through their mouths. And then the silence fell heavy, a silence stronger than any scream. Ethan stepped forward, as if he wanted to break the mood, and tried to hug me. Mom, please. But I walked away, slowly, without anger, without harshness, no, just with clarity. It's not anger, Ethan. It is protection. Oh, they stayed there for a few more minutes, embarrassed, as if waiting for a gesture that never came. And I stared out the window. The sky outside was gray, but inside me a space of peace began to open. They didn't notice. Well, but that was our goodbye, not the official farewell, neither dramatic, nor with tears, but the silent goodbye, the one that comes when we understand that there is nothing left to wait. When they left, Michael looked back one last time. I didn't return the look. Can you believe that? Even after everything, part of me still wanted them to ask me to come home with them. Part of me still dreamed of a coffee together, of a sincere conversation, of a request for forgiveness. But it didn't come. And that's where the greatest pain lies. In what never comes, but what they didn't know. It's just that when they arrived at my house, days later, looking for what they lost. They were going to find something that none of them were prepared to see. And when I tell you what I left behind, you will understand that absence, when well sown, can also be justice. On the last night in the hospital, I wore the blue sweater I wore when I was admitted. It still had the faint smell of lavender and my old home. Claire helped me sit up slowly, adjusted the scarf around my neck, and for a moment held my hand tenderly. His teary eyes said everything my children never said. "Are you really going?" she asked quietly. "Well, I've been, my dear, all that's left is to walk out the door." Rachel appeared a few minutes later. When I had everything ready. Nothing official discharge. No papers that passed through the hands of my children. No. She had arranged everything. The exit through the back. The discreet transport. The necessary silence. I took the letter. The most important. The only one I left on the pillow. I folded it carefully, put it inside a white envelope, and wrote, in the same handwriting I used all my life to correct tests, Michael and Ethan, without anything else. No date, no subscription. I left it there, clean, steadfast, like everything I wish they had been with me. Claire helped me put on my shoes. Rachel held the back door of the hospital. The hallway was dark. A nurse pretended he didn't see it. I left in silence, like someone fleeing a fire after having already lost everything. Outside, Margaret was waiting for me, leaning against the car with the engine running. He had a thermos of coffee and a folded blanket on the passenger seat. "Are you ready?" she asked. "Now I am." We got in the car without looking back. and the street curved and the hospital was in the distance. I turned my eyes out the window. The lights on in the windows of the rooms. The sound of an ambulance arriving. The shadow of the building against the sky. You when you seemed subject. And I thought, that's where I died. And I was reborn. Because not all death is an end. Sometimes it's the beginning. But what I didn't know at that time was how my children would react when they opened that envelope. And what would they do when they realized that had disappeared? Now, 2 days after I left, while I was already away, breathing new air, smelling of freshly brewed coffee and hot bread bought on the road, my children arrived at the hospital. They came together, as if coming to solve a pending matter, not to visit a mother. Michael came with that usual way, talking loudly, gesticulating, as if he could make up for lost time with presence. Ethan, quieter, new, and walked behind, his face furrowed with concern, or perhaps confusion. My mom is in room 214. Michael said to the receptionist without even greeting. The woman looked at the system, paused, frowned, while staring. No. And, sir, there is no longer any patient registered with that name. What do you mean? He replied. She had a heart attack. We came to visit her. That's when the doctor in charge appeared. Dr. Liddy Allen. The same one who looked me in the eye and said, "You survive, Shirley, but not for them, for you." Now, he led them to the room. The door was open, the bed, now, empty. The window, ajar, condenser, and on the pillow was sitting atop the stone. The envelope. Michael and Ethan. Michael picked up the paper with trembling hands, opened. Read. The letter read, "Wade. Children, I gave my life for you. I erased my youth, sold my house, doubled my pride so many times that it ceased to exist. I did it with love, mother's love, but the love that is not reciprocated becomes a burden. And one day, the body gets tired. On the day my heart failed, you toasted. The day I needed it, you kept silent. So, when I said Rocco, I decided to shut up too. I left, not out of hatred, but in the end, stay with what they gave me. Silence. You toasted while I was dying. Now, I live, and you should be left with the void. Michael staggered backwards. The paper trembled in his hand. Hannah tried to get it to read, but he wouldn't let her. Ethan sat in the armchair and covered his face with his hands. He didn't cry loudly. Now, I tried something, but anyone who saw it up close would know. There, someone who never knew the value of what he had collapsed. The doctor observed everything with a serene countenance. Did she go out on her own? Michael asked. He left with legal help. Odds, no one can force someone to stay where they no longer want to be. The daughters-in-law arrived shortly after. Lydia came with a face of guilt disguised in expensive lipstick. Hannah, with the expression of someone who wanted to blame anyone. Anyone. That's your fault, Lydia whispered. You said she was dramatic, that it wasn't worth wasting Saturday to see her. Me? You, who refused to take your grandchildren. The doctor interrupted. Why? None of you were here. And now, it's late. The news spread fast. First among the corridors of the hospital, then, in family messages. Oh, Tafanisteghan. And finally, in the neighborhood, in the bakeries, on the benches in the square. Shirley, the one who made cake for everyone, ran away? He didn't run away. Wow. He left for good. He left his children with their consciences beating stronger than their hearts. People started commenting. The story turned into a whisper, then astonishment, then respect. And, there are things that we live and keep. But maybe, by telling, we help another heart to breathe. Enjoy this video and subscribe. And let's make this story reach those who need it. Where I stood, sitting quietly on the balcony of the inn, but I did. I felt that, for the first time, my silence was being heard. How? And, believe me, when the truth echoes in a void, the sound is deafening. But was this emptiness enough for them to learn anything? Or would pride speak even louder? The answer? It came in a way I never expected. Santa Fe received me with a dry wind and the smell of warm earth, the kind that seems to cleanse the soul without saying a word. Naughty. As we passed the city sign, I felt my chest open like a jammed window that suddenly slides easily. Helen was behind the wheel, with sunglasses, her arm out, and that calm manner of someone who knows the value of silence. Welcome to the end of the world, cousin, or one, who knows, to the beginning of it. She laughed. No. And I laughed along. For the first time in a long time. Her house was simple, made of adobe, with walls yellowed by the sun and lacy curtains in the kitchen. He had no luxury, no, but every corner seemed to welcome, without asking anything. In the first few days, I hardly spoke. I woke up early, drank coffee in the backyard, looked at the endless blue sky, and just thought, no one here knows what I lost, just what I am. Helen respected my time. He took me for a walk in the late afternoon, when the sun slipped down the mountains and turned everything copper-colored. Nobody runs here, Shirley, nor time. I started taking painting classes with a group of women in the neighborhood. They called me Shirley, not Mom, not Mom, only Shirley. And that's when I realized I hadn't stopped being a mother, but she had become a woman again. In the improvised studio, between paints and canvases, I painted my first painting with a cactus in the center and the orange sky in the background. The teacher said it was simple, but strong, like you. She smiled. And You know, there are things that we only understand when we lose everything. It has freedoms that we never dared to imagine, because we were always busy being useful, being a base, being ground for others to step on. But there, Leo Accio, in Santa Fe, I learned to walk on the ground itself. At night, the kitchen radio played songs I didn't know, Latin songs. What in action did Cado I said, and the touch to Zurich star, a piece in Alps, with slow beats and voices full of feeling, and between one note and another, the sound of the wind coming through the window. It was as if life itself cradled me in a lap that I didn't know I deserved. Maybe that's what I was looking for without knowing it. No forgiveness, no rematch, but peace. And if you've come this far listening to me, I ask you, keep going, because what's next? It is what transforms everything. Because when we least expect it, the past comes knocking on the door, and sometimes he comes on his knees. In Portland, I am so disinclined. Time passed more slowly for them, and they are in a sort of whelm on the captivity. At least that's what I learned later on this town. When Michael tried to access my bank account, he found that it was closed, and the balance was transferred to a destination he couldn't trace. He tried to call my old bank, but only heard a robotic voice informing him that the account was closed at the request of the holder. Ethan went to my old apartment. Margaret had already done what she promised. She carefully emptied the place, donated what was no longer useful, kept my books, and left everything clean. What he found was an empty room, where his own footsteps echoed on the living room table. How? We purposely left the Bible that was always open in my house. It was on Matthew's page, and underlined in red was the phrase, "Where your treasure is, there will your heart be also." This time, he understood. Now, the daughters-in-law, they tried to keep up appearances. They continued to post photos of parties, dinners, brunches with the united family, but those who know it closely notice the silence between the lines. The absence has a weight that not even the Instagram filter can disguise. Neighbors began to comment, first in whispers, then in direct questions. Shirley, the one who helped Michael buy the house, disappeared? It's not gone. Left because no one came to pick her up when she needed it most. The weight fell in full. Michael started missing work. Ethan no longer appeared at community meetings. One on Saturday, Howard touched waited to cut us. Their name, once said with pride, now came with a pause of reproach, and the most curious thing is that no one accused them directly. It was not necessary. History spoke for itself. None. The woman who dedicated her entire life to 2 children, and who was left in a hospital as if forgetting an old coat. They slept little, or they didn't sleep at all. Michael was telling a friend that he still dreamed of my voice, calling for help. Ethan, according to Margaret, called her one morning just to ask, "Do you think she's going to come back?" And she replied, "She's so what you so I think you've been gone from her life a long time ago. She only went later. Wow. And if you've been listening to me this far, no, no. Silence can be the highest punishment an ungrateful heart receives, because it echoes. But they still didn't know that, even far away. I had left something more, come, something that would still come to light, and when it came, there would be no denying it, nor how to erase. 6 months have passed since that day I turned my back on everything that hurt me. In Santa Fe, time does not run. It walks beside us, as long as the soul allows. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, I walk to the local market. I buy fresh tomatoes, smell cornbread, warm and greet each face as if we already knew each other from other lives. Here, Han, no one asks me about the past. Nobody looks at me as a burden. I'm just Shirley, the lady who now helps out in the community library, who organizes the shelves and recommends old novels to young women who think life needs to be rushed. The library is small, with crooked bookshelves and the smell of old paper, but it is a sanctuary. And there, in the background, lit in seal, where the morning sun hits, there is a table of my own. That's where I write. A spiral notebook with a blue cover holds what was left of me after the storm. Today, I wrote. It took me a lifetime to understand that love is not an obligation, and that leaving is also a way of teaching. Because I didn't leave to get revenge, I left to survive, and, whoa, more than that, to recognize myself outside the mirror they broke. Sometimes I still wake up with a twinge in my chest, but it is no longer a heart attack, nor despair. It's a memory. Memory also throbs when you least expect it. The other day, near Claremont, I saw a boy running with a toy car, and I remembered Ethan, at the age of 5, making noise around the room. Why, I thought of Michael reading the first books I gave, and for a second, wow, I missed it. But not the longing that hurts, the longing that only observes. Thanks and let's go. If there's something I've learned, Bobby, or it's that expecting too much from others is the shortest way to lose yourself. I waited for birthdays, calls, excuses. Today, I don't wait any longer. I don't hate them. I just stopped waiting. And if what I'm saying makes sense to you, if any part of your story has also turned into silence, stay here with me, because there is only one thing left for this chapter to close. And this thing arrived by mail today. As the sun began to set behind the mountains of Santa Fe, I watered my flowers with the calm of someone who has nothing left to taste. The sky was orange, almost golden, and the wind brought me that smell of wet earth and new promises. It was at that moment that I picked up the phone and recorded a voicemail to Margaret. Tell whoever asks that I'm okay. I didn't die. I just chose to live. And that was it. Mwah. Because that was all that needed to be said. Michael and Ethan never responded to the letter. Maybe they read it once, twice, 10 times. Maybe they cried in silence. Maybe not. I don't follow it anymore. Lydia left social media for a while. Hannah still tries to smile in the photos, but no one else comments. They go on with life, as I went on with mine. The difference is that, for the first time, this life is mine, all, without asking permission, without dividing between the pain of others and the silence of my throat. We spend our entire youth wanting to work for others, but freedom begins the day we get along for ourselves. And if there's anything this journey has taught me, it is that love that needs to beg for itself is not love, it's debt, and a mother should live forever as a creditor of an account that her children pretend does not exist. I forgave. Yes, but to forgive is not to forget. It is just to stop hurting yourself by the memory. They gave me the oblivion. I reciprocated with silence. They left me alone when I needed it most, and I let them be alone with what they did. Life gave me a new name, freedom, and today, I proudly call for it. If you stayed with me until now, listening to me as someone listening to an old friend in the late afternoon, thanks. Really, your time is precious. And his presence here, even on the other side of the screen, keeps me company in a beautiful way. If this story touched your heart, it leaves a like, as if extending a silent hug. This heats up this channel more than you might think. If you want to come back for more stories and more soul-warmed coffees, sign up here. Just click. It's like saying, "I'll be back." Shirley, wait for me, and tell me in the comments, from which city did you hear me? Let's form a circle of voices, of women and men who still believe that dignity has no age, and it activates the bell. See? Wow. That way, you don't lose when the coffee is brewed again. Don't go away yet. Listen to the next true story that will appear on the screen. Always remember, watching ads just a voice to each wrinkle tells a story, and each story carries a strength. Watch the next video here on the channel with another incredible story.